Hi everyone, this is Aga from EurekaCrystalBeads.com and I'm here with another fun beading tutorial for you. Before I get started, just a quick reminder to check out the rest of our channel, and if you like our videos, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you always know when we're posting new content. So today I'm going to be showing you how to make this bead woven brick stitch bracelet. It kind of reminds me of stained glass if you look at it against the light with all of these transparent crystals. I really like it, and I also like the shape in which these segments came out. So this bracelet is made exclusively out of beads from our August 2024 Eureka collection that was curated by Gina from Orchid and Opal Jewelry and Beads, and she made such a beautiful collection. There's a lot of more beads that you can see here, but these kind of inspired and intrigued me the most because of, well, this effect that I thought could be achieved, and just by playing around with all of these beads. So if you don't have the collection, or you just want to, make the bracelet without getting the collection, or you're watching this a little bit later in time, these are the supplies and the beads that you're going to need to make it. You're going to need several 6mm Firepolish beads, and if you use other beads, other size or other shape, you might need to work and experiment on this a little bit with the number of beads and everything. Today I'm going to be using the 6mm Firepolish that were in the collection. When it comes to our seed beads, you have these Miyuki 11-0 seed beads in matte black. Here you have a mix of these 15-0s here, also Miyuki, in these wonderful earthy colors, and we're actually going to be picking and choosing from both of these mixes here. So that's why this one is kind of spread out a little bit more, because we're gonna be choosing the color that we want. Here we have another mix. This is a mix of size 11 Miyuki Delicas, and here we also have our 4mm Bicones. This is a custom mix made especially for this collection, and I'm using the entire mix, well, almost the entire mix in this bracelet. I just saved the black ones to make this earring, which, if you notice, is the same design. I just swapped out some of the beads, and here there's just the center of this design here. So this is how you can turn a bit of this bracelet into an earring as well. Besides the beads, you're also going to need a clasp if it's going to be a bracelet, and you can use the one that you get in the collection, which is this one. I think it's really nice, but we're gonna get a little bit more ambitious in here and make a clasp out of beads, which I'm also going to show you by the end. And when it comes to supplies, you're gonna need a needle and some thread. I'll be using a size 12 needle and just a bit over half a wingspan of 6-pound fire line. The thicker the fire line, the heavier the fire line, the stiffer your segments. And these are made with this 6LB, and they are currently like this, which will work very well for a bracelet because it will just lay very nicely and go with the movement of your hand. Now, I don't recommend using nylon threads such as Nymo or 1G because they will make these segments a lot more kind of bendable and flexible, foldable, almost too soft, I would say. So I certainly do recommend 6-pound or 8-pound fireline or wildfire for this particular project. And that's it. Maybe just some scissors to cut off the excess thread, and we can go about our beading. Just one more word on the thread. As you can see, I'm using the color Crystal, and you can use different colored threads. You can use the black thread. This is what I used for this earring. As you can see, it is visible because this is brick stitch, so it will be visible, and I personally like this look with the black thread a little bit more, but I decided on white for this bracelet because these Bicones and the Firepolish beads are transparent. So if you use a dark thread, these beads are going to show a little bit of a thread. If you know what I mean, they will just get darker, and I wanted them as light and unchanged in color as they can be. So that's the reason for white thread. And as for the length, like I said, a little bit more than half a wingspan of thread should do. And for most of these segments, you can cut it off, and when you start, just leave enough tail to weave it in later. But for that first one, where there's going to be one side of the clasp, maybe leave the tail so that you can make the loop that we're going to be making for the clasp right with this thread, and you don't have to add another piece. Okay, so let's get started with a segment. So the way you do it, the way you create a base for the brick stitch is basically you go around your Firepolish with just bare thread. I'm gonna go through it and pull it through, pull my entire thread through, just leaving enough of a tail to weave it in. I'm going to go through the same bead once more so that I got 2 threads on this side. I'm gonna go 2 times through that bead to have 2 threads on the other side. And these 4 threads, 2 in here and 2 in here, are going to be the base for our brick stitch. So if you know how to brick stitch, this is going to be super easy for you. If you don't know how to do this, this is how you do it. We're gonna start with black 11/0s, black Miyuki 11/0s, and we're going to start with 2. And you go straight down under these 2 threads on one of the sides. Now, depending on which hand you're using or which way is it more convenient and comfortable for you, I'm gonna go like down towards my dominant hand here. And what you do is you just went under these threads in here, and you're gonna go back up through that second bead that was added. So that when you pull tight, and I'm holding on to the tail thread so that nothing comes apart at this point. When you pull it, it just stands up, just like this. And you can add another bead. This time it's a single bead. And we're going under these 2 threads here again. And then back up through that bead from the side that is not connected by a thread with the previous bead towards the side that is connected with that previous bead with a thread. So that when you pull it down, it kind of stands up. Stands upwards here. Next 11/0. You go under these 2 threads and up through that 11/0 bead. Just like that. And you go around. And when you reach this place here, like above the hole of the Firepolish, this is the time when you switch to the other side and the other 2 threads that are wrapping around the Firepolish, and you just go around, go under these threads on this side, and the beads will just kind of pull together and either stand on both sides of the hole, or one of the beads will be directly above it. Then you just continue. Now this is going to be my last 11/0 Miyuki bead that I'm adding, and you should end up with 11 of them around. So if you count, there's 11 of them. And now I'm going to connect the 2 sides by going into this 11/0, the first one that was added. And I'm going to treat it as if I just added it, so I need to go under the threads, and I'm going under the second set of threads. So I was going from this way. I finished with this bit here. So these are the 2 threads that I'm going under on that side that's further away from me now. And I'm gonna go up this very bead, but I'm on the other side, so I have to turn my work over, and I'm just going exactly through that first bead that was added. And this is what you have at the moment. Now we're going to be adding those Miyuki Delicas, and as you can see, I didn't do them in a mix, but I kind of separated the colors. I just omitted the bright orangey color because it didn't quite match the vibe. Now I'm going to use this color that is kind of like a violet with some, like this muted violet with some green. I really like it. And first you're going to pick up 2 of these, and we're just going to continue the same way we were going. I'm going to go under the first thread bridge between the 2 beads in the previous row, just like so. And I'm going to go through that second of the Delica beads upwards so that it stands up like this. And now I'm going to be adding single Delica beads. And it's not going to be one bead per one thread bridge. As you can see, I attached this one to the next thread bridge. But if I tried adding another Delica like in here, that will be extremely far away from that previous one. So in some cases, you're going to have to put two Delicas on top of the same thread bridge. So I'm gonna add this one in here, and kind of a rule of thumb that I use on where to put another bead and where to just skip over to the next thread bridge. The rule of thumb is, okay, let me tell you in a moment when we have an example here. So I'm picking another Delica, putting it under the next thread bridge, like on top of the next thread bridge. I'm going under it with my needle. Okay, so this is what it is right now. And the way I determine if I should put another bead in the same thread bridge or go on to the next is if I can fit half of a bead from the edge of this bead to the middle of this bead underneath, so this 11. So can half of the bead fit from this bead to the middle of this 11 here? And here I can see that not exactly half a bit can fit here. So I'm going to try going under the next thread bridge like that. And as you can see, this next bead will just place itself on top of this 11 underneath. And in here, I can definitely fit half a Delica bead in between this bead that's going to be here and the middle of this 11. So I'm gonna add the next Delica on top of the same thread bridge right over here. And the way you know you got it right is where from the side it looks sort of straight. If you add too many beads, so if they're a little bit too crowded out here, this is going to kind of be wavy because they're not going to fit in one line. Now, as you can see, this next bead that I added kind of goes almost on top of this 11 under it. So I'm adding the next Delica on top of the next thread bridge. But the next one I'm going to add on top of the same thread bridge as the previous one that I just added, because half of the next bead can definitely fit here. This next thread bridge now. In here, it's actually a difficult decision, but I am going to put another bead on top of the same thread bridge. As you can see, it's almost exactly on top of that 11 under. The next one. Here I'm just going to be adding one, so the next one will be in here. But then this thread bridge will definitely fit two beads on it. I can see it's a straight line, so my beads are okay. So I just continue on. And this was actually my last one. I'm going to connect it with the first one I added, and I'm going to go ahead and go under this thread bridge and up that Delica, the first one that we added in this row, and this is what you get. For those of you who like numbers, in each of these segments, I have 18 of the Delicas in this second row. Now the next row is going to be Bicones and black 11s. You're gonna need 8 Bicones, and of course use any colors that you like. And here I mixed it up a little bit, like in this color I have the topaz and the cyan beads, same here. But for these two colors of Delicas from the mix that I use actually a mix of almost all the colors. So what you do is you take a look at where you're coming out of. And because I want my bicone to stand exactly along the whole of the Firepolish So I want it exactly in here, which is going to be more or less on this thread bridge. So I'm gonna start with a bicone. If your thread was coming out of, say, this bead here, if this is how you end up, and what you pick up is first a bicone and then 2 11-0 beads, and you go through not this first thread bridge, but the second one in here. So you kind of skip one, because the 4mm is a large bead and it's going to stand in the middle of that thread bridge. And I go up through the 2 black 11-0s as if they were like a single bead that I added regularly, and this is what it's going to be. And you don't want to pull too hard because you're gonna need that extra thread that is now visible, but we'll later be going over it with some more beads. Right now I'll pick up a red bicone, just a bicone, and I'm gonna go under the next thread bridge here. Not pulling too hard because I do want that thread over there. 2 11-0s now. And I'm going under the next thread bridge. Just want to pull it enough so that the beads kind of stand up nicely. Now I'm going to pick up another topaz, bicone, and under the next thread bridge. Because of these beads are larger than your seed beads, they're gonna take up more space, and even though kind of the space, the circumference around your work has increased, you're not going to have to put 2 beads on top of the same thread bridge. Now 2 11-0s, next thread bridge here, and basically you do it all the way around. Since there's 8 of the bicones, you're going to have 2 on each side mirroring each other, so there's going to be another one exactly on this side. There's going to be exactly one on the opposite of here, so it's going to be around here. And if anything is off, just remember to go under the next thread bridge. If anything gets too crowded, just go under the next thread bridge instead of this that is the closest. And now I'm actually going to skip one thread bridge because the Delicas arranged themselves in a way so that this bicone didn't end up exactly in the middle. As you can see, it's a little bit to the side. So I'm not gonna go to this thread bridge with my 11-0s, but the next one here. And in this way, I'm going to pull this bicone a little bit towards the middle so that it stands more on top of that Delica bead rather than on that thread bridge that's before it. Okay, I'll go on putting my beads on top of every thread bridge now. And here is going to be another place where I'm going to skip this thread bridge and go under the next one because I want my bicone to stand on top of this one here. So it just makes more sense to add the black 11-0s over here. That will be more in the middle of these bicones than if I went under that previous thread bridge. Now I go through the bicone and under the thread bridge that I want to place it on top of. And everything should not come nicely together. As I said, do not pull too tight because we need that thread to make the next row on it. The next row is going to be black 11-0s because I want to make these sort of nice framing, nice arches above the bicones. And again, I'm picking up 2 to start the row. And I'm just going to go under this large visible thread bridge over here and up that second one. At this point, I'm actually going to go already under the next thread bridge, and it's getting a little bit more tricky because it's harder to kind of eyeball it. In most cases, you will fit 2 11-0s on each side of the bicone, sort of, on each thread bridge, just like that, and I will fit 2 on the other side, but occasionally they may get a little bit crowded and like on top of a bicone you might only get 3 instead of 4 seed beads, and that's absolutely okay. And this way you just create this lovely outline on top of your bicones. As you can see in here, I almost went over the pair of 11-ohs that we added in the previous row, so I will definitely not fit 2 11-ohs on this next thread bridge here, so I'm just going to add a single one on this side of the bicone. And the next one I'm already going to add on the other side in here. And on this side I will fit 2, just like this, and we're sort of back to normal. We have 3 11-ohs on top of this green bicone in here, and you might end up with just 3 once on each side, or you might end up with 4 every time. Just don't crowd these beads too tightly together. Alright, this was my last bead, and I'm gonna go through the first black one that I added in this row, under its thread bridge, back up, and this is what we have now. Final row, I'm going to make an outline out of Delicas, again starting with 2, going under the next thread bridge. And actually in this row we're also going to be using the 15-ohs, and for this colorway, because it's also a mix, so I'm going to pick and choose, and I'm going to choose these sort of transparent pinkish 15-ohs. In here I chose these opaque orange ones, in here as well, same orange ones. For this one I'm going to be using the pinkish ones, and I'm going to add them each time above these 2 11-ohs in here, more or less, just because they're smaller and they're going to create more of a wavy shape in the design. So it's going to be like flower petals, maybe a bit like this, like this, like this. You can of course go with the Delicas all around. I'm just using it to add a little bit more shape to the segment that I'm making. And in here again, you have to decide if you're going to add another bead here, or in the next thread bridge. I'm gonna add one in the same thread bridge. And in general, you're going to have 4 Delicas and 1 15-oh. There's my 4 Delicas. I'm gonna add the 15-oh. And voila. Now this is not an exact science, but you should have more or less 2 Delicas in the middle on each side of your work. And again, I'm looking at it so that the whole of the Firepolish is like going through the middle, so this side, and exactly where I finished is exactly where I'm going to attach this segment to my bracelet. I'm choosing the side without the thread. Alright, so I also have the 2 central beads in here. So I'm just gonna match them together. Here are my 2 central beads. And in between these segments, I'm just going to add 1 black 11-oh on each side. So I'm starting here, just going through the right Delica on the other side. Right back through the other Delica. So this one in here. Adding another 11-oh through the Delica on this side. And I'm gonna go back up for another round, only this time I'm going to go through the black 11-oh on the other side as well. Just to make it a little bit stronger, I'm gonna go back through the black 11-oh next to it, and the Delica, and all of the beads on the other side as well. I'm gonna go through all of it again just for good measure. And now I'm pulling sort of tight so that any thread that I have will hide as much as possible under these beads. It will be visible because, well, these beads have to be connected somehow, but it will be less visible if I pull tight. Now I'm going to hook on some of these threads under here and tie my knot. So making a loop going through it. There's another loop so that it's kind of a double knot. I go through that loop. I pull it down and I'm gonna hide that knot in the bicone and go through some more of the beads. Why not through the Firepolish as well? I can trim off this end of the thread. I'm going to weave in the other end as well. Right, and my bracelet is done. For most wrists, you will be fine with 6 segments or 7 segments. If your wrist is super small, then 5 might be enough, but I don't think so. I think 6 is like the regular size, plus the clasp that we're about to make. Or you might need 7 of these segments, which you will easily make with the Sunflower Bliss Collection. Alright, now let's make the clasp. We're going to be making a toggle clasp, and the bar of the toggle is going to be made out of these Lavano Delicas. I will maybe just add some more because all I have left are these bright pink ones, or orange pink. First up, we're going to make the loop of the toggle. It's going to be a bit of a lazy toggle because we're only going to be making a loop and not a very elaborate kind of circle for our clasp. This is also where you can kind of adjust the length of your bracelet. For me, I think just the toggle will be fine, but if you wanted to make it a little bit larger, you could add the 6mm Firepolish up first to make a little distance. I think I'm gonna add a 4mm bicone here, and I'm coming out of like exactly in the middle here again, so that's not a problem. I don't even have to go anywhere with my thread. That's very convenient for this pattern. And now we'll make a loop that will be large enough to fit the bar that we're going to make, but not too large so that the bar does not fall out. And I'm going to make the loop out of Miyuki round 11/0. And for the loop I'm going to be using 30. I'm going back through the bicone here, down the Delica that's next to it in the middle of this piece, of this segment. This is what I have. I'm gonna go back up through this first Delica here. Actually, at this point it's a good idea to tie a knot so that this loop has lower chance of getting more loose at the end, because if you just go around and around, it can get a little bit more loose, but if you tie a thread along the way, it's less likely to get that loose. So I'm gonna go up the bicone and all of the 30 Miyuki rounds again. Now I went through this entire loop twice more, so 3 times in total. Now I can go down with my thread, tie my knot and hide it in the bicone. Alright, so that's our toggle loop. Now it's time to make the bar. Now I got a new half a wingspan of thread on my needle. I'm not cutting it off from the spool because that's just the way I prefer it. I'm gonna pick one stopper bead. It's going to be a 15-0. I'll go through it twice because this is going to be a peyote bar. So I hate when my peyote kind of slides down my thread, so hence the stopper bead. And now I'm going to pick up 18 Delicas, and I've decided that my toggle will have these kind of purple, violet, green Delicas on the sides, and then the middle is going to be a random mixture of the lighter and the more bright, more saturated yellows in here. So this is what I'm going to start with, and this is the length of our bar for the clasp, so it's going to basically go like this. Now I'm going to pick up another edge bead, so this kind of purplish one, And if you know peyote stitch, you know what to do. If you don't, you skip that last bead that you added. See, this is the start of my sequence, this is the end of my sequence. You skip that first bead that you added and you go through this next one, so that when you pull tight, these two beads get together and this one is in the middle of them, in between them sort of. Now I'm gonna be picking up the orange ones randomly. Is it orange or yellow, you told me? And again, I'm gonna skip one bead in that row that I just added and go through this next Delica, so that when I pull tight, this is what I have. This next one will go here. For this next bead, we're going to skip the next single bead again. The last bead in this row now. So I have to end up coming out of the first bead that I initially added on my thread, and this is what our first 3 rows actually look like if you think about it, because the first row are these beads here, the second row are these beads here, and the third row are these beads here. So now you just turn back. I'm gonna pick up the purplish color and I'm gonna go back, and now it's easy peasy because you just go through all the beads that are a little bit raised, just like that, and you just continue on doing this until you've created a larger piece that you can roll into a tube. Right, and this is actually absolutely enough. You want to have 6 beads on the edge on each side, and we're doing even count peyote stitch, so you have an even number of beads in the beginning. So the important thing is that wherever on this side you have an elevated bead in the same row, in the same kind of, maybe not row, maybe in the same column of beads, or there it is elevated, here it is kind of sunk in, and the next one is elevated, but on this side it's sunk in. This is so that you can take this and make a tiny little tube out of this, and now we're going to be zipping this tube up. So I connect this last bead that I went through in this row and the first bead in here, and then I go into the raised beads on each side. So I went into the raised bead on that side there, and then this one, and then the next one is in here, and then this one. I like going through them in pairs because it's quite easy and makes it a little bit more quick than if I went through individual ones. So I'm just zipping that up, and you can absolutely make that tube a little bit larger. This is going to be just for the clasp, so I wanted it as small and stiff as possible. And it's so seamless, you can't even see where we've stitched the two ends together. I'm going to slide this stopper bead down now. We don't need that here. Right now I'm going to connect the last elevated bead on this side, and as you can see, these two beads here are not connected. This is our first and this is our last row, so I'm going to connect them. Just like this. And now you can leave the toggle as is. As you can see, it is not very flexible, which is what we wanted. And you can leave it just like this. It's already pretty. But you can also lodge bicones like at the end of this toggle clasp. I'm gonna use red ones. And because we want it kind of inside and not on top of this, so we want this narrow part of the bicone sort of going into the tube, I'm gonna go through this bead here, but I'm actually going to come out on the inside of my tube. So I'm going through this bead and into the inside of my tube. I'm putting on the bicone. I'm adding 1502 block it on top here, and I'm actually going to turn my tube and go through one of the beads in this second row in here, just like before, from the inside. And I'm gonna go up the Delica next to this bead, and again go in the middle and right through the bicone, through the 15-0, then the bicone again, and I'm gonna try and go through one of the beads on this other side here again, and twice is absolutely enough. As you can see, it is lodged a little bit deeper into that tube. I'm now gonna go through some of these beads. You want to go through the beads to the other side. Or actually, let's stop halfway down the tube. Well, not exactly halfway, because I'm like 8 of these rows of beads away from the edge. And now we're going to attach it to our bracelet. We're gonna need a little bit of a longer chain so that we can fit this through our loop. And I'm gonna go in with 8 of the Delicas, and at this point you can adjust the length a little bit. You can add more, you can add fewer, but I wouldn't go fewer than this, the 8 Delicas, because you might have problem fitting your tube, your bar, through your loop. But for here it will be perfect. So I'm aligning this clasp with the end of my bracelet, and I'm actually going to go through this one of these central beads on the side of the segment, and you can go through the black bead underneath it. You can just go through the one Delica. In here I'm actually going to start with a single Delica, and I'm gonna skip that first one, and I'm gonna go through 5 of the remaining Delicas, leaving 2 on that thread there, so that I have something like this. I'm gonna pick up 2 more, and we're doing this because to attach this connection evenly in the middle, I have to actually go a little bit diagonal on one of the sides. This would be this bead over here. And now I want to turn back to go through all of these beads again. So I'm gonna go through one more bead next to this bead that I was coming out of, and I'm gonna turn back by going through bead next to it, so this one, and then I'm gonna pull tight to hide this thread here and to pull everything together, of course. Now I'm gonna go through this bead again, and I'm gonna go through all of these beads in this sequence just like before for a second time. And I'm gonna come out on the other side of this V shape, reverse V shape. And I'm gonna turn back on this side the same way again. So I'm going through 2 beads on a diagonal. And I'm gonna come back through the bead next to it. And I'm gonna go through all of these beads again just to come out on the other side. Right, and now I can just go on to the other side where I'll add my bicone and the clasp will be ready. Now that I'm done with my clasp, I'll just make a little knot somewhere in between the beads, just to make sure that the bicone stays in its place. If you decide not to add a bicone, then you can just weave this tail in, just go into the beads and then turn back and go into some more beads, and this way you will secure the thread. And now I can trim off the excess thread, take off my stopper bead, and do the exact same thing with my tail thread, so I'll just weave it in. So this is the finished bracelet. I like how it's a combination of two basic stitches. So these segments are brick stitch, and then the clasp is peyote stitch. I also love the two mixes that actually inspired this bracelet, or actually three mixes, because I didn't include the Bicone mix, which I also love very much, with the transparent Bicones in it. I really like this effect. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, this is actually how many of you watch our videos but are still not subscribed. So if you like this video, make sure to click that subscribe button and the notification bell so you get notified and you don't miss other fun projects. Also, make sure to check out Orchid and Opal's YouTube channel. That will be linked down in the description, as well as all of the materials for this bracelet that you can find at eurekacrystalbeads.com. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye!